everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at Laura and Other Stories by Guillem March. This is out from Ablaze. I just got it in the mail and blazed right through it. Same as yesterday, I got another Ablaze book, Bastien Vivez's The Blouse, and blazed right through that and loved it. The two books are similar as well in tone. They're both by male artists, but they're trying to create like well-written stories about women, but also obviously as an avenue to just draw sexy women, which is fine. It's like, it is what it is. I don't have anything wrong with that. I really enjoy these books. I enjoy drawings of sexy women. To me, it's like critiquing Milo Manara for drawing sexy women in pornography. Like, that's what he does, so it's fine. So anyways, this is similar. This first story, the main story in here, Laura, is similar to the Carmen story in that it's about the girl Laura, and she has a crush on a friend who's in another relationship. It's not reciprocated, but unlike the Carmen story, it doesn't go into like this weird kind of afterlife ghost metaphysics. It just stays grounded in real life. The art in this one's not quite as good as the art in Carmen. I believe this is older artwork of Guillem March's. One of the big thing, and I'll show some other panels, is at the time he was obviously obsessed with like really over rendering on the colors and even including photographs and stuff. And there's a bit in the back where he writes about that he got carried away with that at the time, and he now prefers the flat colors and actually had wanted to go back and flatten out some of the colors in this book, but that he had flattened all his files and so couldn't get back and do the colors, which is a hard lesson that I've learned over time. You like flatten the file out and save it without all the PSD layers, because it's like you just don't have all the space on your computer, and then later on you're like, oh my god, I wish I could go back and just fix that one little thing, and now it's all flattened. So I think he realizes that this is like this kind of overly rendered coloring wasn't the best thing for his art, and has moved on from that, and that's fine. Artists grow. This is early in his career. So that said, the art's still really good, still really impressive stuff. Just, he's a beautiful artist, and really his sense of rhythm and all of that stuff has always been there. But the other thing is like a really good writer who is capable of writing lines of dialogue that really punch and feel right to me. So, and this is in Carmen and in this book as well. So here you're with Laura and her friend who she has a crush on, and they're at the beach talking about love, and she says, I'd rather that someone just found me. And he says, it's just a matter of time. In the end, all the pieces will fall in place. Besides their relationship, and they're talking about some couple on the beach who's being like overly like ooh goo goo gaga, and she's finding it kind of gross. And so he says, their relationship is at its peak. In no time, the spark will disappear, and if they decide to love each other, they may end up like those two over there. And then it's looking at the old couple, like ignoring each other while the guy reads the newspaper. Wow, what a way to describe it. That's life. Affection remains. Passion has an expiration date. And I really like that little two-sentence thing right there. Affection remains. Passion has an expiration date. And they go on to talk about this idea that at some point, like, real love becomes like a choice, a day-to-day choice where you're just waking up and, like, some days you may feel the passion and the affection and all that, but some days you won't. Some days the other person's going to be driving you crazy, or they're going to be putting stresses on you, and you just have to wake up each day and keep choosing to do that action rather than revel in the chemicals. And there's actually, speaking of chemicals, he starts the whole thing with actually a breakdown of dopamine and norepinephrine and all these other chemicals that go into it, as well as the reverse of that will lead you into depression, like the decline of serotonin and all of that. So he's very aware of the chemical states behind this, but then talking about the legit like psychological things as well, making a choice. So I think that's really good. Here you get an example of where he's obviously just dropping photographs into the background. Probably when he was doing this in 2013, I think he said in the essay in the back, I also would have thought that was cool. And now I much prefer the flat colors, as he says in the back, and I'll show that in a minute. Here's another one of the really great lines. Pay me no attention. Lately, I'm in need of a bit of affection. She's out on a date. She's been set up with this guy on a date. This is their first time, and she's like leaning on his shoulder. So pay me no attention lately. I'm in need of a bit of affection. I may be some help. It just happens that I'm an affection bank. Is that true? You could give me some, couldn't you? Give you? No way. But I can lend you some, I give you some, and you give it back to me later. What do you think? That's how banks work. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. Other banks have fooled me with the fine print, and I really like that. It's one of those things where you're probably not going to get an exchange like that in real life, but it's a really well-written exchange where you kind of like, I don't know, if you were text messaging someone, you'd have the time to be all witty like that. Or there are people who are like that, but not me, you know. So it's always kind of thing where you afterwards, you're like, fuck, I wish I could have had a conversation that was just like, the replies were that good and on the spot. But I really like it as a bit of the writing, especially the other banks have fooled me with the fine print. So those are the kind of things I really appreciate about Guillem March's writing. I won't go into the story more than that. I definitely suggest picking the book up for yourself. Here in the back is where he's talking about his process, and he shows one of the pages in its flat state before he's done any effects to it. And I quite like this a lot better. His line work wasn't as slick as it is now, so I could see why with less confidence in your line work you do a little bit more bombastic coloring, but it's too bad because I still quite like that. And then you get all of this, seeing his pencils and everything is really nice. And then there's two more stories in the back, and these are done in his more contemporary style, more confident line work, cleaned up, and then just having those flat colors and some really beautiful little, actually there's two stories in the back, just some line work that's in the colors. So this one, I don't like the story as much. For what it is, it's a particularly good example, but this just an artist like struggling with their status as an artist. Like, what am I really doing? This is one of those type of things. Why am I always... So he gets picked up in an airplane by Miyazaki, and then Miyazaki's like, you're lazy, you're not trying to get better as an artist, you just draw the stuff you like, you just draw ladies, you even draw yourself as a lady, why don't you draw someone on a horse? And he just has this argument with himself about being an artist on the page. And fun to look at. In terms of what it is, it's one of the better written ones of this kind of thing that I've seen. But I don't know, I feel like every artist needs to do this, and I get it, you got it, and it looks nice, so put it in a book. I'm sure I probably have something similar to this that if we do a collection of my short works at some point will be in there, and I'll be embarrassed about. I don't know, I guess because I complain about it so much we should just take it out. I don't know if I have something like that. It's got to be something close to it though. I feel like every artist does it. So that's in there. And then there's this one, the Muse, which I actually think is really funny, and I like the idea. So March is talking about doing a self-published art book, crowdfunded, and 80 of the books had like a sketch put in them, and he knew that he was going to collect the sketches and make a story out of it. So you own a panel of the comic. The sketch that you get in the book is owning a panel of this future comic. I think that's a really cool idea for sketches for a crowdfund. So he scanned them all before he sent the books out, and then colored it and made it into comic. And I think this is a story, I don't know how autobiographical this is, but I assume this is him here who's looking for a figure model to pose for him for a final project in an art class. And he's got this sexy roommate, but it's like she's the roommate, and they're like, oh, gross, she's just another person in the house, but she's kind of thinking about posing for him. And just dealing with the guys in the house arguing about who's got better boobs, Sofia Vergara or Monica Bellucci, and she's sitting there and they're talking about her boobs. So it's all like real uncomfortable for her. And this is where I'm saying I feel like this is an artist who's trying to paint like a sympathetic picture, draw a sympathetic picture of women and what women have to put up with men. But then it's still like this fantasy about, I'm hoping my hot roommate's gonna take her clothes off and show me her big luscious boobs. So it's kind of always undermining itself, but I think he's well aware of that. And I really like the kind of the real subtle expressions at the end of it. So, and this is again, this more confident kind of line work he has, and this more confident coloring style that he has now that I really, really like. When I'm looking at this stuff, I think a lot of Guillem March seems to me like if Brandon Graham drew more realistically. Like the line quality is pretty similar, and then their color palette feels really similar to me as well. And I don't know, so it's like if you strip out all of the strange surrealist sci-fi stuff of Brandon Graham and ground it in just reality, I feel like this is the type of comic Brandon would make. So that's fun too, to see people with similar kind of things going on, but going in very different paths with it. That's fun. And then in the back you have some sketches and some of the cover printed in black and white, a cover gallery, stuff like that. So cool book. It's fun to see some of the beginnings of what someone's doing, and you know that, okay, well, Carmen's a great book. Carmen's a mature artist. This book is a good book. It has its flaws, but it's also a good record. Like, I'm really a fan of getting people's, and even though I complain about these type of stories and I'm saying, well, you should keep them to yourself, there is a part of me that's like, look, anything that an artist does can be interesting to their fan base, and it's good to get it all on record, because you get like, I'm always interested in an artist's career as a totality. You know, any given project you can assess it on their own, but I think the most interesting thing is looking at what someone does as a career, as a whole single statement. And so getting all of this early stuff, the stuff with the warts, the stuff that, you know, it's like the embarrassing everyone does them kind of stories. I do like that quite a bit. And that said, like, warts and all for Guillem March is still like better than most people do. So really enjoyed this book. Really happy with the last two Ablaze books I got. They have a particular thing that they're promoting, I guess. So I'll have to keep an eye out for the rest of what they do, because they have fantastic tastes in artists. I wish they would like get rid of this kind of schlocky library book cover style, but that's okay. So really good book, highly recommend it. If you haven't picked this up, get this one, and if you haven't picked up Guillem March's Carmen, definitely go get that one. And even better, get them together and read them as a 1-2 punch. If you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel, the two best ways that you can help are support us on our Patreon. We have 3 different tiers on the Patreon that come with different kind of amenities. The higher tiers have early access to like books that me and Sean are working on. You kind of get some previews of that kind of stuff, and then there's a tier as well where you can enter to win some original sketches. That helps us have extra money for the books that we do reviews on and stuff. And then the best way to really support the ongoing effort of Living the Line is to support the books that Sean has coming out through Living the Line Publishing. So we'll take a look at some of those now. The Abolition of Man issue 2 kicks off a 2-part storyline called Hodtech. This is a science fiction satire written by myself and Sean. I wrote issue 2, he wrote issue 3. It's taking a look at a world in which AIs are doing all the jobs, and we humans just have jobs just to stay busy. We're all on universal basic income. This is still all illustrated by the Midjourney AI. We were just prompting it to work in an independent ink style, going in afterwards and kind of playing with color and stuff like that. But still a fully AI illustrated comic book that is a satire about AI. Salaniyalo, Path of the Shades by Clarence Doss is a really cool ongoing project that Living the Line will be producing. Clarence is a PhD student from Fiji who's studying the myths of Fiji for his doctoral thesis. And part of that study project is that he's producing these comics. They're kind of like Hellboy, where there's these little short stories that capture all of these different mythologies. But then he's using that to wrap the project into his doctoral thesis and then provide educational material where people can come to these comics. You know, they don't have to read his PhD thesis. They can come to the comics and get a more consumable version of the mythology of Fiji. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.